Yeah, the Revelations now televised. A platform for you and I. And now look with full heart and clear eyes. Now, these are just my thoughts. Truth on how I feel on these topics I reveal. Please know my toll, I always keep it real. Can't face the word if you can't face facts. For your time, just open up your mind. That's it, just live, think big, now take that. With God in me, this here was made by design. Yeah, the revelation will be televised. Revelations.
All right, welcome back to the Revelations podcast. I'm with my man, Elliot. Elliot, how are you today?
Awesome, man. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. No complaints. Living life, man, and really want to get into this conversation. Of course, this is part 2 of the stepdaddy series I have. I was raised by a stepfather. I know my biological father. He wasn't as active in my life as I would have liked for him to be, but still, I got love and honor and respect for the man. My stepfather, though, he passed away in January of 2022. And that was my dude. Like that's dad. That's the one that raised me. I say that I get more from him than I have any other man in the history of the world. So you are a stepfather, but I don't want to give everything away. I want you to introduce yourself to the people. You can talk about what you do. I know you're a businessman. Just let everybody know who you are and what you're about.
Yeah. My name is Elliot Holland. I'm a HBCU grad, fancy MBA holder, digital nomad. I live in Medellin, Colombia. I'm currently in the States in Atlanta, where I spent 20 years working on a visa. And I live in Medellin with my girlfriend and her 13-year-old daughter. And that was purposeful and thoughtful, and there was nothing happenstance about that. And I'm very happy with the choice that I've made. Um, it's a little bit different than choices other people have made. I think we're going to get into that in a moment. But I think generally, I love the mix and the community and the sort of the household that's been created. And I think I'm very happy with my choice. And there were part you can't strategize love. I'm not going to sit here and act like that, but you can definitely sort of put yourself in position to win according to your rules. And I definitely think that's part of sort of my journey.
I like that win according to your rules, because as it's stated today, as we record this, my rule has been, I don't want to be somebody's stepdad, right? I was raised by a stepdad. My stepdad came into the picture. My mom already had 5, right? So this is, to me, he was Superman. And I used to tell him, Dad, I will never in my life do what you did. You are a better man than me. I refuse, right? I kick it with him, sure. But when it comes down to doing that, because I don't want to spend all my hard-earned money raising somebody else's child, etc. But you chose that, and you said it was strategic, right? You can't be strategic in love, but like you said, you can put yourself in the position. So you strategically put yourself in a position to date somebody with a kid, and you're an eligible bachelor. You know what I mean? You're a high value man, if you will. So there you go. So the question is, like, what led you to that decision? Me and you talked off wax, and you preferred to find a woman with a kid. That's the exact opposite of me. So what led you to that choice?
I'm going to touch on something to answer your question. I didn't really think of it this way because my older half brothers and sisters were grown when my mom married my dad. When my mom married my dad, and he had 5 kids before they had myself and my younger brother together. So she didn't really have to play active or even like parental role in the truest sense. But I guess to an extent, my mom was stepmama, and that may have contributed to my way of thinking about this. But I think for me, so I run my own business, and I have been for a while. And admittedly, businesses have their ups and downs. And for those that own them, you sort of recognize that once you kind of get an equation that's working, once the cash flow starts coming in, and you figured out the craziness, and you figured out your marketing, your sales, your delivery, you can't let that go, because we all let go of W-2 jobs a long, long time ago. Okay. And are either approaching unemployable or are very unemployable at this point. And so you can't always take a week vacation. You can't always have a 2-hour dinner and not pick up your phone. You can't always avoid a phone call. And when I was dating a couple of years out of business school, I was dating the regular type of women that everybody was dating, power couple situations, the young, hard charging, professionals that would have been kind of equivalent to me, but female. And what I found was that they did not understand the concept of having like a business that just took the time that it took. Like
Right.
it couldn't just fit into a 9 to 5 box. It couldn't uh it couldn't necessarily always be cash flow. And sometimes you're investing in it. It couldn't always allow you to be either public or private. And sometimes it would blow up at 1:37 on a Friday afternoon at the airport, and you may be delaying a flight to the Bahamas, whatever the case may be. And so I stopped dating for several years because it just didn't make any sense. And then what ended up kind of hitting me was that a lot of the women that I knew, I date Black women. So a lot of the women I knew had children. And when I started spending more time and kind of thinking about it, it was like, hold on, a child is kind of like that same sort of situation. Like if a child has a meltdown at 1:37 on a Friday, right when you're supposed to go to the movies or dinner, she's calling you and telling you she's gonna be late. If the kid has a blow up at school on Monday morning and you guys are out of town for a long weekend, she's cutting that weekend short and coming back home. And so what I felt like was the women who had children had a better understanding and appreciation for the importance of a scenario that was going to take the time it took. It was positive for the units, but it was going to take the time it took. I feel like I was a little bit verbose there, but
No, no.
that's how I'd put it out.
So yeah, you equated like the children to business. Like, hey, a woman with kids is going to understand that. Boom, my business is going to potentially pull me away, just like a kid can pull you away. I mean, you could be at the most romantic dinner in the world. If the babysitter call you talking about your kid has explosive diarrhea or explosive vomit, hey, dinner be damned, you got to go. So same thing with the business, right? And I'll admit, like part of the reason that I don't want to like date seriously or be with a woman with a kid is because I am selfish. I'm pissed that I planned this whole weekend, this whole romantic date or whatever, and you got to
Yeah,
leave because of a kid. Now here's the thing:
yeah,
the kid that I didn't have fun making, like I'm
yeah,
real. I'm like all the way real with it. Like a kid that
yeah,
I didn't have fun making, a kid that
yeah,
you want me to be responsible for, but I have very to no say in the raising of that kid, and a kid who ultimately, and we'll get into this in a minute, a kid who ultimately, no matter how great they are, they will be building a legacy of the biological father. The example I like to give is I'm working on my doctorate, right?
mm,
I was raised by Gregory Allen Lewis. My father's
mm,
name is Mac Revels. When I get my
mm,
doctorate, I'm gonna walk across that
yeah,
stage as Timothy Adam Revels, whose legacy is
yeah,
being built out. Not the man who was there for me when I scraped my knee and at every
sure,
birthday and at every
sure,
basketball game, and the one who picked me up
sure,
when I went through a divorce. Not him.
sure,
Whose
sure,
legacy is being built? The guy that missed so many birthdays, who never called. I'm not going to say anything else bad about my biological father, but his
right.
legacy is being built. So me as a single man is thinking, wait a minute, Pop, you signed up for a bad deal, right? Like you
Mm.
do all the work, you're going to get none of the credit for it. So anyway, so you looked at it
Let
as a
me let
business.
me let me interject a couple things.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, first off, any household you lead, you have an effect on anybody that walks in it.
Agreed. Agreed.
And I give a gosh darn whose child it is, because like if my stepdaughter's friends come over and start acting up, it wouldn't be a physical reprimand, right? Or reprimand rather, but it would certainly be house rules.
Absolutely.
My house rules would govern. And I think the other thing for me, so I I don't think lineage is the only way to create legacy.
Okay.
In fact, I've seen a lot of almost the opposite. So like if I think about a lot of the black prolific leaders, and even a lot of business leaders, what ends up happening is their excellence and how much they spent in working on a problem that benefited the public, a whole race.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the Martin Luther Kings. Think about um, a lot of the other artists and entertainers, their children suffered because they weren't there to raise them.
Would agree.
So their legacy then becomes their public works. And unfortunately, oftentimes their children are never able to live up to even modest expectations relative
Would
to who
agree.
their parents are. So if I flip the lineage or like the legacy thing, I'm very comfortable with my legacy being the body of work that I contribute to this world in
Okay.
total,
Yeah.
even if it doesn't have to come through a seed of my own, because I may not want to have kids of my own.
Yeah, I get that. And I'm spot on. And I think that my stepfather's legacy is he can live through me, right? Like he's like, I raised a kid who is breaking barriers in his family. And I want to go through my list of accomplishments because it's not about that, but he can, right? So his impact is impacting me. I'm just saying, like, to the world, it's going to be the Rebels bloodline. And I'm like, it's Rebels DNA, but I'm more Lewis than Rebels, right? Because the my work ethic, my so on and so forth. So I'm not saying I'm right.
Yeah.
I'm just saying from a
No, no, no. I think that honestly, bro, I think one of the things that we get in trouble with sometimes is allowing other people to define what we can claim and what we can't.
true, very true. I like
So
that.
if I'm your stepdaddy, wherever I'm at, I know I did the work. I don't need
Yep,
anybody else to legitimize or validate
I
the
agree.
contribution I made to
I
the
agree.
activities that are happening. Even this conversation right now is a manifestation of an impact that that brother had on your life.
Oh,
The very fact
100%.
that you're able to do some of the things. And so I
100%.
think, for me, it's like I've gotten more prescriptive about where I need external validation for things.
Mm,
For instance, the whole
mm,
concept of being very comfortable in a place full of beautiful women, bringing an American woman to date and being with a smile on my face, not, oh man, I got stuck. You know what I mean? Like, how many times have I heard I brought sand to the beach?
right.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
And I pledged a fraternity in Atlanta. And first thing cats look like, man, you brought sand. It's like, hey man, like my success metric is different. Metrics are different. So
Ah, okay.
I get the public thing and the last name, but I would say legacy, I think, manifests in many different ways.
Yeah, I would agree. So let's get into some of this stuff more specifically about about stepfathering, et cetera. So I'm just going to run down some statistics. You were talking about Black women in particular, and this in the United States. I pulled up a publication in by NBC News. I'm trying to get the date on this thing. Don't exactly have it is. I'll pop it up on the screen. Oh, it's 2010, so this might be a little dated, but it'll work. So
Sure.
it says 72% of Black women with children are unmarried, right? So that's a huge thing. 17% of Asians, 29% of whites, and 53% of Hispanics, and 66% of Native Americans were basically unwed, like they're unwed mothers. So there's a large capacity, and as a 41-year-old, when I go out and try to date, I am meeting that, and I'm like, man. So I'm having this conversation, of course, because I may have to change my tune because I'm limiting myself, right? If I'm just talking about Black women, right, it's 72% of them out here who, I mean, they have kids and they're not married, so that's going to be, that's going to be the good majority. So how is it? I know I'm going to ask a very general question. Being a stepfather, like what is that like? Like you were taking care of another person's kid. You bought a package deal, which is cool, but
Yeah.
how do you develop that relationship with the kid to where I know you, man, you're gonna have to treat that girl like she yours. So give us that story. How long
Hmm.
you been dating? How long you been the stepfather to this beautiful girl?
Yeah, so we've been dating in between 3 and 4 years. The exclusivity point and when we started dating and all that kind of stuff gets complicated, but it's been in between 3 and 4 years. Um, my stepdaughter is 13. She'll be 14 this year. And how do you manage it? I think watching other people manage it, because of the statistic you talked about, there's a lot of um mixed families and co-parenting in our community. So it's not like I wasn't able to see some of that up close. And I think the general census, both in the experiences I had coming up, but also ones I saw, was sort of don't push it. Like I can't push my friendship with the new homie I meet on the basketball court. I can't push my friendship with some dude I see at the coffee shop. Don't try to push it with a child. It's just, hey, like, be yourself, be cool, try to find points of commonality, try to establish who you're trying to be, and sort of be specific with who you're not trying to take the place of. Um, be consistent and let the rest happen as it may. I mean, there were moments where we didn't get along, like not short moments, long moments. But at the same time, you're not always supposed to get along with a parent at 13, at 12, at 11.
I
So
like
that's not the goal. So I think a lot of my thinking was just your success metric would be how this young lady performs at 18, at
mm,
24.
mm,
You're not going to know whether you're good or not now. You're
mm.
just you're just there being consistent.
I like that. And you're right. Like that I didn't get along with my mom, my biological mother, when I was 13, right? I teach high school kids, and there's not many high school kids that get along with their parents. I ask them, how many of you guys like your parents? It's not a lot of hands raised. And I'm like, no, let's just be
Right.
honest about this because they're at that age. But I will admit, I mean, and you know this, it's not really your job to be her friend. I mean, that's not what it is. If you happen to be her friend, so be it. But it ain't your job. Your job is to help raise her correctly. And how do you balance that with, like, if I meet a woman and she doesn't have a kid, here's the example, and I'm like, me and you are going to have a baby. We can talk about parenting styles, and if I decide,
Sure.
hey, I don't like your parenting style, we're not going to have a kid. The kid's already there. This woman has had a
Yeah.
parenting style for 10 years, roughly,
Yeah.
and you have to come in. So how do you put your parenting style mixed with her? Like, what are those conversations with the mother like?
Sure. You know, honestly, bro, a lot of it's figuring it out. Like there's there's like maybe guardrails on parenting from my understanding. And so let me put it this way. I'm not an expert. I'm a stepdaddy aspirant. I'm starting off, and I'm hoping I'm getting better. But again, I won't know until, she gets 24 or something. And my experience has been, most people generally think about raising a child in generally the same ways. Like, if you're faith, the same things that would allow you to date a person seriously for a long time typically have some commonalities in how you think about the world, how people should function, how you should direct and instruct. On the fringes, I think you have to be comfortable with, um, and this is where I think some of your, I would call them more conservative views, I think do
Sure.
govern. My girlfriend's been raising her daughter since, you know, before zero, since in the
Yeah.
stomach.
Yeah.
And so if it's between how I think and how she thinks, it's how she thinks, because
Mm.
that's her child she brought into the world. She has, the status quo is the way that she's done it. If I want to make recommendations or change the direction, then it's actually a pathway that I take through my girlfriend most
Mm.
times, not directly to my stepdaughter. And the reason why is because I'm almost asking permission to move the needle in a way, and that's a respectful request, not one out of like subordination.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like that. So that's the part that, like, yeah, I lean more conservative in a lot of things, not totally conservative, but in a lot of things. And you said something there that honestly it sparked something. You're like, I asked permission right there. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on a second. The reason I've struggled with the ask permission part is because I know stepfathers, my stepfather included,
Yeah.
were expected to do certain things, provide, right? Yeah, he was expected to bring his whole entire paycheck home and take care of us. Now, it was different
Right.
because they were married, right? It might be different
Sure.
under your situation. He was expected to protect, so provide,
Sure.
protect, teach, and
Sure.
all of this. So then,
Yeah.
how could he be expected to do that, but then have to ask
Sure.
permission to
Sure.
scold or
How do you
chastise?
reconcile?
Yeah. Redirect. So that's where my struggle is. It's like, wait a minute, I'm expected to do all of this, but then I gotta ask to raise or to rear a child. Help me out with that.
It's sort of like, you ask because you don't have to. You ask out of respect. Let's flip the script and say I didn't have a girlfriend. And I don't know if you have a sister or not. Let's just say your sister came to Medellin and she was a bad, fine looking something, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to ask you to date her.
True. True.
I would out of respect. Now, if I ask you, you're in an interesting situation too, because you know I don't have to ask you.
Right.
So your answer probably is tempered by the fact that someone who didn't have to ask came and did.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's less about the permission, it's more respect, right?
Okay.
I whether your answer is yes or no, I've asked you, we can discuss it. Um, we can be men about it. And
Mm-hmm.
now um I don't have to be worried about an awkwardness in a situation that might have some implications. To
Okay.
me, it's somewhat similar to that in terms of, you know, I think of leadership and I think and I've tried to figure out what are like the finite words that govern some of the stuff that's going on. But like recently some things have popped off where it's like leadership. So when you're the leader, you set the tone, but in this particular instance, you are somewhat subordinate to, in my case, the mother's parental authority around a child. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes the ego can get in the way of just common sense,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No,
you
and
know?
I agree. And like we're men, we have egos, right? So there's a swallowing of pride that I don't necessarily want to do, and that you do, and you may do it more masterfully than me. So with that, with the relationship, so you go and ask permission. Do you ever run into "you're not my daddy"? Like even if it's not said, is it? Are you like that's a real thing? Like
You know
so,
what, man? I was so worried about that. You're not my daddy. And I never caught like a flagrant foul joint. You know what I mean? Like I
yeah, yeah,
never
yeah.
caught a flagrant foul. But
Oh,
had I caught one, I'd have probably been okay with it because I wasn't trying to be her daddy
yeah. Okay.
in that way.
Wow.
So it's
Okay.
like being accused of something that I'm not aspiring to be
Wow.
again, um, would almost be a mismatch. It would be a conversation rather than a hold on,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
But wait.
bought this pizza.
Let me say this. So if you're
Yeah.
not trying to be her father, then what are you trying to be? Because my experience is different. Dad, Pops, Greg, was trying to
Yeah.
be dad. So he did all the
Sure.
things that dad do, and I loved and appreciated him. And you're saying you're not trying to be. So walk me through that a little bit.
Well, my funny thing these days when I'm out with people and I'm like, I'm stepdad Ed. I try to make it fun. You know what I
Okay.
mean? So I think the role of a stepfather is different. I'm supposed to, in my mind, provide another household, another form of leadership, another impetus for a woman that I'm dating and a child that's in the household to be great. The one role I think I'm not taking on to the full definition is daddy.
Mm.
Why? Because she has a daddy.
Hmm.
I'm not that. I'm
Mm.
stepdaddy. He can't say stepdaddy. They're
Right.
different roles,
True.
right?
Mm.
In all honesty, in a parental situation, he may govern on how something is going,
Yeah.
right? And and I think you walk into the situation recognizing that. And one of the things I wanted to toss in here that may be a little bit against your flow, but I'm just gonna do it.
No, please do.
Um, I think a lot of times people say I'm not gonna do X, right? But by not doing X, you're saying you're doing Y sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the alternatives. Um, People that are in our 40s, making money, traveling the world, unencumbered by children, unencumbered by anything. I mean, you run into some hot boys and hot girls.
True. True that.
So you might not be dealing with um sort of an extra mouth to feed in the household, but you might be dealing with two, three times the amount of suitors lining up to compete with you for what you're trying to do, or two or three brothers with, you like Medellin, he like Cartagena, the
Right.
other brother like Puerto Vallarta. And now, you competing on pictures of where y'all going on the weekend, and that unencumbered person can go either which way. If success, is sort of being a bit more stable, which was part of my success metric, then dealing with someone that hadn't clearly made commitments to a stable situation caused issues for me in other situations. You know what I
Get it.
mean?
I get it. It's simple, like everything's an opportunity cost, right? Like, so the fact that I want to date women without children there's a lot of benefit, right? I'm
Right,
unencumbered, like you said. We can literally do whatever we want. Hey, it's a random Thursday. I got Friday off. Let's go to Puerto Rico. Boom. Ain't no babysitters or nothing.
right,
But then at the
right.
same time, that person has, I don't want to say has more options, but sometimes the child is a stabilizing thing. Like, because now that person has to think, my life isn't just about me. I need to live for somebody else. So the actions of the mother directly affect the life of the child. So yeah, there is some give and take there. I want to go back because I didn't want to interrupt you about the the thing, and you said the stepfather, etc. So I agree, right? Like, you are not her father, she has a father. Great. And I did too. What are you, and this would be a simple question, what does she call you?
We're still working that out,
Okay,
brother.
okay, 3
Honestly.
10, okay.
Elliot.
No, I feel you. No, because
Elliot, I never made that like a big deal.
okay,
What I would say is, for someone listening that might be like, man, this dude just weak sauce. I think it's
no,
respect. Respect is respect every day of the week.
yeah,
Disrespect is disrespect every day of the week.
yeah,
What you call me doesn't necessarily define the level of respect that someone has for me.
man,
And since honestly, bro, it disrupts another human's life, that's one of the degrees of freedom. I'm kind of like,
right,
call me L, call
right.
me home. As long as it's a respect and we're managing a respectful relationship, I'm less interested. Because here's the thing. I think a lot of people get in trouble over these titles, these terms, these other things. And maybe it's my coming up as a business person. Like, if I want to run game on a young employee, I'm going to give them a vice president or director title because it don't matter nothing to me, and I don't have to pay them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's certain times when I think you pay for the name
Mm-hmm.
because it's so important to you.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. So my stepdad, I call him dad. I never called him Greg, but he was dad.
Ah, that makes some sense now.
Yeah, he
Okay.
was dad. But he was dad, right? He was okay, so I'll give a quick story.
Yeah.
My pops has passed away, so it's all good. I could tell this story. So we had just recently moved from Alton up to Champaign, Illinois, and my
Okay.
oldest brother, he's 12 years older than me. So he was out. He's like 20. I had to be like 8 or something like yeah. So we had just moved up there, and he went and got into some trouble down the block. When we stay in the hood, when you got trouble down the block, and some like grown man slapped my brother. Wow, right?
Mm.
So my brother,
Yeah.
new to the city, he ain't gonna wild out, and there's a lot of dudes around, right? So
Right.
he come home and tell my stepdad, dad, who we call him, somebody slapped.
Yeah.
My dad did
Yeah.
what dads do. He grabbed his
Yeah.
tool, walked down the
Right.
street, and said, "Who hit my son?" Right? So
Right.
my
Right.
stepdad was dad. He did everything a dad does. He did the protecting, the providing, giving us provision, etc. So that's why I was wondering. So my experience is, and the way I think about it, is that if I'm going to be stepdad, I'm going to be dad because that's all I know. I don't know. You about to call me Rev or you about to call me Timothy? No. I pay too many bills around here. Just like my father, that's what my dad did.
Mm.
My dad was paying
Yeah.
bills, taking me to the hospital,
If you say you're gonna
protecting
pull
me.
out the tool and go down the street and risk my life, then I
Yeah,
want full rights and privileges. And it's funny,
right.
man, because that stuff inherently turns on. So, as a nomad, I live a lot of times in Airbnb. So we were at an Airbnb, and I live on the phone a lot, conference calls, whatever, whatever. So I'm in a conference call situation, Airbnb, and it was a somewhat newer Airbnb. and a dude in what looked like, industrial HVAC clothing knocks on the door. And it just so happened my girlfriend, her daughter, and my mom were in the house. He's like, hey, we're doing an inspection, blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna come in. He stepped in the house. I'm like, hold on, man. And he was talking to my girlfriend, and like what he was saying was reasonable. And then I stopped my call and I was like, hey man, you can't come in here until I verify who you are. Well, no, you see the shirt. I'm like, man, I bought shirts all over the world. If you come in here with my girlfriend, her daughter, and my mom and cause some problems, I'm gonna have some problems with you, and you should just stop where you at. And if that's a problem, then you should just back up out of here because it's just not gonna happen. And I think
Like
to your
that.
concept of like protector, I don't think you give that up. I just think for me, I'm still, you know what, man? I think I'm just willing to earn whatever I get in this
Fair,
one because I
fair.
think I'm investing strongly, and I think the one of the things for me, like when someone, it's almost like you telling one of your employees that you're a good boss. You know you're a good boss when your employee gives you an award. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
When your employee
Wow.
invites you to dinner,
Wow.
when your employee invites you to their wedding. That's when you'll know. Everything else is unfortunately like forced to a degree.
I agree. And just for conversation's sake, my dad didn't lay anybody down that night. You know what I'm saying? It was all peace. It just was I didn't get a chance to finish. I want
Said
nobody.
all peace, double entendre.
Yeah, right. Double up time. It was all good. But no, and he nor my mom ever never forced it, but he was dad, so we called him dad, right? And
Yeah,
it was earned. We saw it. Like, wait a minute,
sure.
he was doing everything that dad's supposed to do. Okay, so good. So you came in at 13, you're still trying to figure that out, trying to develop that relationship, etc. But do you view her so your stepdad? Do you view her as stepdaughter or do you view her as daughter?
I think in the truest sense, stepdaughter, but again, I think that's just because it's the more convenient title, on,
Mhm.
July 11, 2023,
Okay,
right?
fair enough. Yeah, okay.
But I'll tell you a funny story. So we're in the airport a couple of days ago, and like we got the clear pass because I like cutting lines. And
Hmm.
so it's me, my girlfriend, and her daughter. And so, they're checking to see for child trafficking and stuff like that. So what they'll do is they'll quiz the kids. Like, so the one of the ladies at the clear was like looking at my stepdaughter, like, well, who is he? And she's smart, so she knew what was going on. She said, my dad, right? More because it was the simpler answer, right?
Wow. Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm joking with her like afterwards, like burn, burn, because
Right.
I don't really, that's not what she calls me in the house. But it was a kind of funny instance where, again, like everybody sort of knew in that environment that was the easiest answer, but nobody's like saying, okay, now that's the only thing you can call me for the rest of your life.
That's fair. That's fair. And like as a kid, so I'm gonna put myself in her 13-year-old shoes because I was the 13-year-old raised by a step. Now he came around when I was 5, right? So
Sure.
I had more of the long term, but I always wanted to be proud that I was a black person who had a man that stayed around. So I didn't say stepdad. I wouldn't say this is my stepdad. I would say this is my
I see
dad.
what you're
So,
saying.
so when he came to school events, that's just dad. I didn't, the only people that knew he was my stepdad were the people that knew my mom prior, knew my family prior, right? And then my
Yeah,
closest friends, the guys around the
right.
way, but just the general public. So if we're
Yeah,
at school and it's parent teacher conferences, and they say, "Is your mom coming?" I'm like, "No, my mom and my dad are coming." Right. And I don't tell them
right,
that,
right.
my dad is my stepdad. I guess if they looked at the paper and they saw
Sure.
that his last name was Lewis and mine was Revels, it might be.
Right.
But as a kid, I admired those who had mom and dad at home. Now, funny story, I had 3 guys I kicked it with in high school. All of them
Sure.
had biological mom and dad at home. So now I'm
Right.
trying to think back. Maybe a part of it was I want to fit in, right? And I just got
Sure.
so
Sure.
but the thing that I love most is I didn't grow up in a fatherless home. I grew up without my
Right.
biological father, but none of my
Right.
siblings, well, my oldest brother can say, because he was so much older, but none of the youngest four can say, we grew up in a house without a dad. So and we
Right.
understand how important it is. So you're doing important work, because we know that children without fathers, or without, and they don't have to be fathers,
Right.
without positive male role models in the home, are more likely to be put in jail, etc. All of that. 85%
All
of
of that.
juveniles who are in juvenile jail or whatever are living in fatherless homes, or maleless homes,
Right.
etc. So so
Right.
so you're doing good work there. So another question for you about it all is, like, just the mentality of it. It's like, you are not bringing. We all bring baggage, of course. I'm not talking about that, but you're not bringing this into the situation. So, without trying to get you in any trouble, and you're very smart, so you can sort of slide this question off if you want. Are there ever times where you're like, man, I want to do this, and I'm not the reason we can't, like, go on a trip, like a you and your girl, because you just want to go, because of
Yeah.
course you need you and your girl
Yeah.
time, because you fell in love with your
Yeah.
girl before you fell in love with your
Yeah.
stepdaughter. So explain that to us a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, it's happened a couple times, man. I mean, recently, I wanted to go to Rio. And I was willing
Yeah,
to go with the whole family, but at that time, I think things have changed. You could not get into Rio without vaccination.
yeah,
And so for months, it was like that gentle push, like, do you want to vaccinate? You know what I mean? And ended up not doing it, but it definitely has impacted. I'm also lucky that at 13 in this society, the phone takes over a lot of the um time. And so, she'll go in a room for hours, be on the phone, and almost have to like pull her out to
yeah,
come have dinner or
yeah,
something. And so
yeah.
it does allow a lot of free time to enjoy my girlfriend, which honestly made it a bit easier to sit in this role. So, I think, you mentioned the baggage thing, so I'm gonna address it. Because the reason I'm here is, when you came to me with this concept, one of my boys actually pushed me to be more open to this. And I would like to pass on at least the logic in my head. It's like, bro, I believe at 40, everybody got baggage.
Well, yes, we all do.
We've
Yes,
been trained in some capacity to
yes,
either be too independent, too dependent, too whatever.
yes.
We're set in our ways enough that, it's going to be real hard to get us to like totally flip directions and pull a 180. Um, and I'll admit, being a business owner in a very sort of difficult financial environment, there's a lot of stress involved with that. There's a lot of expectations involved with that. There's a lot of, particular things that I like in a certain kind of way that goes along with that. And so, my thought was always, how do I get to a successful place? So I'll flip it another way. Um, I've had the benefit of being able to watch a lot of white families um, grow and make decisions and start households and get married and build foundations.
Ooh,
And I think that one of the things that I've seen is very different in the way that they think about it versus us generally is this concept of like a power couple, which was such a big thing for decades, I think, in our community, and
right,
just wasn't a thing in theirs because the roles are actually different. And so you have duplicative effort in that capacity. And so one of the other things I would say is that um, when someone has already been forced to, so they have the skills of rearing someone, some of those things you sort of get automatically versus another me with a wig on, another woman with all this professional stuff may have given up cooking 15 years ago. You
right.
know what I mean? It
Mhm.
might see cooking for a man as blasphemous as someone else may see some other thing that becomes like part of our identity. And I
Yeah,
think you got to choose the whole package, in my opinion.
fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so I want to get one of father's, like, you talk about the providing, like, you're a businessman, you're definitely providing for the daughter. So a part of what my father taught me was what men do is protect, right? So we protect, on to the point of death, like, literally. Like for real.
Yeah.
Like my stepdad put his life on the line for my older brother and
Right.
and for me, and in multiple situations where he's going to do whatever he has to do to take care of us, even though we were not flesh of his flesh and blood of his blood. And I'll be honest, like, I know what it is like to receive that love because I received it, but I do not know
Right.
what it's like to give that love. And I'll just be honest with everybody here, with everybody that's listening. I don't necessarily know if I have that capacity, to be
Right.
honest. So I think stepfathers, the true ones, have that capacity. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the protection part as well, because
Sure.
when like, am I off base when saying a part of the father's role is to protect even upon putting his life on the line for his family?
No, I mean that story I told you earlier, had that dude been a jack boy
Yeah,
coming in the house, we'd have had to scrap.
of course. So
And it'd have been me or him.
So I want to
Um,
say this. I want to ask a question. I really want to throw back to you, but I want to ask this question. It's important. So maybe it's a question more or just a statement that you can respond to. It's hard for me to separate the fact that that is not my kid. Like, because no matter what I do, that still isn't my kid. That card can always be played by either the child, the father, or the woman I'm dating. Because if I want to do something, that's not my kid. If we get a divorce, I have no legal rights to that kid. So I have
right,
no legal rights.
right.
I am expected to die if need be for a kid. So help me, man. I know you see
I
what I'm
feel you. I
struggling
feel you.
with.
I
I'm
feel you.
struggling
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
help me out.
I struggled for a long time. Another reason why I'm doing this. And words are powerful, and I think how you define a situation is powerful,
Okay.
right? So uh if you got a car, but your car doesn't have AC, and the way you define your car is you have a non-AC having car. Now
Mm-hmm.
you have defined your car in a certain rubric and communicated it to the world. All the people going to do is going to rag on you and your car, but you gave them the ammunition to do it.
Absolutely. Okay.
You also poo-pooed on yourself every time you refer to your car. The car drive, you can get across town, you can go to the movies, you can go on dates, you can go deliver pizzas. But now that you define your car in a derogatory way, it over the emphasis on it. I call it centric. Like you've now made it a bad item centric situation.
Okay.
So if I flip your commentary, would I die for a kid that wasn't necessarily biologically mine? Well, bro, there's probably friends you have that you might die for. There's
True.
probably homies, that you might die for.
True.
Family members that um may have their DNA in you, but not the reverse. And so part of part of this for me, honestly, has been being very careful how I define who people are to me, and
Okay.
not necessarily relying on the traditional paradigms to do it. So when I introduce people to my girl, I don't need to give them the whole 411 on her whole history going back to Grand Rapids, you know what I'm saying? Or Spokane or freaking Buffalo, New York. Like, bro, I chose her, she's here. That's really all you need to know at this point. You know
Fair.
what I'm saying? And I think a person not being necessarily biologically mine, again, you talk about like the concept of like this is my house. So
Yeah.
so even if um my stepdaughter had friends over here and something were to go down, I would naturally, those other children that may be over here would also be an extension of somebody who's in my
Mhm.
house. And I think that's
Wow.
the responsibility of
Wow.
it being your house. And also, let's be honest, I think rule number one of this game is you should know that if something wonky happens to this child in your care, you're gonna be held responsible for it.
Yes. That part. Because so I don't like the idea of being held accountable for something that I cannot control. What I mean by control is this.
Yeah.
I'm responsible and held accountable for the well-being of this child. But I am not always in control because either I have to ask permission or I can be trumped twice by the mother or the
Yeah.
father.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is it's a me problem, right? This is a rev. This sits within me. I know I need to have a different perspective. That's why I'm talking to you, so I can gain a different perspective. This
Yeah.
is a platform.
You're actively going after it, bro.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
but honestly, um, the next 10 years of our lives will be being held responsible for things we don't have control of, that the impact of them being good or bad will have quintessential impacts on our lives.
Mm-hmm.
I almost think our 20s and 30s of like, free flowing and
Yeah,
grabbing certain things that you're responsible for and have control over. And hey, man, this is it. I ain't messing with that. That stuff over there, that's not me. I think a lot of you're not responsible for the mechanics of your car or like the walls in your apartment, but if they bust down, they're gonna affect you.
yeah.
Um, your career, my business. I don't have control. I have control of the levers that I pull, but not of the
Mm-hmm.
customers who choose to patronize me. And
Mm-hmm.
even, the workers who deliver the work. I'm not in Excel doing every single piece of analysis. I'm still responsible and accountable for the result. So, you know, again, this instance may be a particular one of like deep importance, but I think at the same time, it's becoming more and more clear to me that we ain't really in control of that much, bro. Like, and when we think we are, we sometimes lie to ourselves, um, and want to be in control. I mean, so for instance, if I can push my brother a little bit, you're not in control of the love that any woman gives you
That's so true. 100%.
before you even get to
Uh,
her. Like, bro, she could switch up
1000%.
on you tomorrow.
1000%.
Could have
1000.
happened to you yesterday. So
Yeah.
like control, what's that? You know what I'm
It's
saying?
it's fair. No, it's totally fair. It's just my way of thinking, and I'm challenging myself to think differently. I have been a person who has said what I'm not going to do. You know what I mean? And a lot of times, what my not going to do's have helped me in life. Right? I'm not going to be a product of my environment, like a negative product of my environment. That's good. I'm not going to turn to drugs and alcohol when I get into stressful situations. That good. But now I've also been telling myself my whole life, I'm not going to date a woman with kids. Well, let's challenge that a little bit. Let's see why. And that's what this conversation is doing. And you've helped me. You've given me some keys and nuggets. And really, it's a different perspective on it all. Right. And that's what I need. I'm not saying I'm changing right now, because if you ask me today, I'll still be like, nope, not going to happen. But these are seeds
Right.
planted, and we know good seeds sprout over time. Right. And that's what it is, man. So I appreciate you, man. You've helped me so much with this. Again, this is part 2 of this Stepdaddy series. I'm looking forward to getting into part 3. I think it's going to be great. I got a surprise for you guys with part 3 and the guests I have. But anyway, Elliot, thank you for joining the Revelations podcast. I appreciate you. And to everybody out there, hit us up at the Revelations podcast at gmail.com and on the IG platform. And we'll holler at you next time. I am because we are. Peace.